Today's episode is supported by the Kranzberg Arts Foundation. The Kranzberg Arts Foundation provides essential infrastructure and venues for creatives to thrive in St. Louis because the soul of a city is shaped by its arts. Go to KranzbergArtsFoundation.org to explore some of St. Louis's finest dance, art, music, and more in the amazing Grand Center neighborhood. Now, here's Coach Jen with today's Soccer Mom Sunday.
Good morning.
What's up?
Happy Sunday morning. I like this one.
Little
Trying to
vibe.
peek on your phone because I can't see.
There you go.
Oh, I like that. Little Charlie Crockett. I like that.
Yeah, playing this one because at the time of this recording, my boys and I, my older two, all three of us, well, two of us put on our boots and jeans. All three had jeans. One had, of course, Air Force Ones on or something like that. Headed out to the factory in Chesterfield Valley and watched Mr. Charlie Crockett.
Nice.
It was so much fun. Do you go to concerts? Do you?
Not often. You know, like big ones. I just don't like all the people.
Yeah,
I went to, as you know, I went to New Kids with my sister, and
Yeah.
I think that might be our last one. It's just
Really?
a lot of people. And they had it at Riverport, which will always be called Riverport by me.
Yeah.
Sorry for whoever's
No, I did that.
sponsoring them now.
I did that. We went to the which concert was it? I think it might have been Chris Stapleton took photo, like with everybody else
Yeah.
from the lawn, and I photoshopped the whatever it's called now.
If you're a Gen X, you just say Riverport, we all know
know,
what it
I did.
is.
I
But if
put-
you say one of the sponsors, it's like, is that currently who's sponsoring that? Where is that?
it's Hollywood Casino Amphitheater.
There you go. Sorry, Hollywood.
Whatever.
But yeah, I don't. It's funny because my son George, who's 18, went to, I don't remember who he saw at the pageant. He went to the pageant. Of course, I had him my talk about how being safe and just all that kind of stuff. And he was like, "That place is cool." I'm like, "It is really cool." I like that, the smaller
In twos.
intimate environment. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. If you haven't been, go. Factory is. A lot of people joke it's Pageant West. A little bit bigger,
Oh.
a little bit cleaner, more bathrooms, more bars,
More bathrooms is always good.
free parking.
Free parking's great too.
It was really good.
Yeah, I
It was
have
a
not
fun
been
time.
to that one. That's awesome. So what's been up?
Oh my God, we're just kind of we've been recording a lot on the dad side.
I see. You just got my Harper. You put Matt Miller. I was like, oh,
Matt Sauce.
Matt was somebody that I wanted to coach Georgie, but he didn't get in that team. But he coached Harper last year in this past season, and really good. I don't know how he was before he had kids, but I think him having young ones now, I think it makes you a better coach. He just really knew how to relate to Harper and motivate her in the right way.
Yeah, he comes with a long resume.
Yeah.
A lot of years at Gallagher before heading over for change of scenery, new goals over at Fuse, and they're entering into the fifth year of a crew of trainers that kind of all went over there at the same time, and so now they're kind of coming into their own. And we obviously talked about the 08s,
Yeah.
the GA team, and he's got that balance now of soccer brains, but also parental empathy. And he said he went out to the GA final and was like, I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I was there as a fan. Yeah, I was there with the club. But it's good to hear that because a lot of people just have so many preconceived notions with clubs and pay to play, and everybody has ulterior motives. And a guy like Matt Mueller is like, he just loves the game and he wants to help kids.
Yeah, I remember the first time, because I wasn't sure. I didn't know if he'd coached girls before and how that would train. And I didn't know how young he had gone. He had coached when Georgie's in 06, so he's coached them when they were a little bit older. But I remember when she was just I came to a practice a little bit early, and I was hearing him, whatever he was, the way he was getting Harper to give more of herself than she thought she could. Harper's like one of those, she's like, I'm tired. And it's like, you're not tired yet. And then she goes and she's like, oh, I have more in there. She has more in the tank. Just the positive motivation. He held her to a really high standard, but the positive motivation, he's like, yes, it's exactly what I would see. A lot of positive talk. And he's figured out that she responds to that.
Right.
And she will give you more in spades. And so that was cool to watch and listen to as a parent.
Yeah, we are around the game all the time. It's at multiple levels, right? From a professional standpoint, you're down there talking to Lutz and Co. right at City, and then obviously you take your own littles to the little world, and everything in between. And we're in the same boat, and I think that paying attention to those little things, just kind of that, the ability to motivate, the ability to support. Because that's it. Like, all these kids have skill sets.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all going to get the touches. They're all going to go to the wall, and they're all going to play, do the super sixes and shifty sevens and all that other crazy shit.
That's right.
But to go to a club, you really want to pay attention to kind of that character.
Yeah, and she's moving into, and the other coach is good, really good, but it's obvious that he doesn't have kids. So the way he speaks them is it's much more technical, tactical, and it's not wrong. It's just that it's kind of like, how do you find it? And that's social emotional intelligence for Matt to have figured out. This particular player responds to this kind of motivation, this kind of speak. She doesn't. I mean, it's going to be a skill set she has to learn. We've had to talk her through before when she only gets the negative version, right? She only gets the you need to do this or you're not doing this. She's only 8, so we have to talk her kind of through, like, what is that message? What is he trying to tell you? Kind of a deal. But it's really cool to have Matt figure that out right away with her.
Well, I wanted to ask your opinion on, before our guest dials in from the other side of the world.
Literal other side of the world.
Literally. I wanted to get your take on the Berkey posts. And you're already chomping at the bit. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to paraphrase. He did an interview in which he addressed his own need, his own value with speaking to, I don't know if it's therapist, I don't know if it's a friend, I don't know if it's a confidant. Tribune,
talk to someone, anyone.
And basically it was like mental approach.
Yeah.
What's your initial thoughts when you saw that and the value of an individual like a Roman Berkey, who is held to, he's on a pedestal. He's on a very unique pedestal. For him to admit to needing that, to utilizing those interactions, what did it mean to you to see that?
So it meant a ton, because Roman he's one of those players actually that of all of them, I get a little more nervous than others to talk to because
he's so dreamy.
He is, and he's a young man to me, so ew. But he's not, Indiana Vasiliev walks by you, right? And he is just an older version of my Liam, right? I see him in that way. Roman and even Tim Parker and some of those guys walk by and just have a little level of detachment maybe that's not too cool for school, but one of those where I'm just like, I want to be sure I do this right. I want to just be sure I don't screw up. And I get a little bit more nervous than usual. To read that article, and I've got it in front of me right now. Actually, so truth be told, I had a little bit of a rough interview with him this year, and for me, and because he wasn't in a great mood, the team's not doing well. He didn't really want to talk, and then when he did, it wasn't necessarily, let's say, the friendliest interview, but it was fine. We were professional, but it was kind of those you walk away and you're like. Then I read this and I'm like,
did he stay in English or did he jump back and forth?
He didn't jump into German Swedish or German.
So there's no Swedish,
but it's one of those. But he could probably speak it. But he Swiss, yeah. He didn't. It wasn't one of the warm and fuzzies I'm used to having, and that's okay. And then when I read this article, I go, oh, it made me see him as a little bit more of a human being and a little less of the stud goalkeeper who has it always together. Well, we don't. We all have bad days. We all have things we struggle with. And when I read about when he's 15 years old and he's just like, you don't have it, it felt really personal. There's more under the surface of all of us at any moment in time. And I was like, okay, Jennifer, remember that. Well, maybe he's human too.
Well, isn't the story you just told of bad interview? Clearly, maybe he's having a bad day, he's frustrated, et cetera. And then we fast forward to this article in which isn't that literally a microcosm of exactly the subject matter?
Yes. And I read it because at first I was like, oh, and then I read it and I was like, oh, and then my heart bleeds because I have anxiety. I have tremendous anxiety. Sometimes even to come and do what you and I are doing to get me to come, I'm like, you said you're going to do it. Let's do it. I get what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I have sometimes to even stand at the practice. I'll sometimes have a good day and I'm fine. And then sometimes I start shaking for no reason. I'm like, what are you doing? What's happening right now? Like you've talked to most of these guys right now. And it hits you out and you have to talk yourself through. And then you think, I'm crazy. And to have him put an article like that, it just kind of made me tear up. And I was like, it's like his dad motivating, trying to get him to go. And he's not packing. My oldest does that. You motivate somebody with anxiety and you dig at them, they do less. They withdraw. I do the same thing.
Where's the article?
So Players Tribune.
Players Tribune. So if you're listening and you have a little one, I would advise all parents to read it first because
I'm going to reshare
telltale signs.
For sure. And I just look at that and then you've got pictures of him when he's a bit younger, when he literally looks more like what some of the new players look
Did he
like
still
when they
have
come
that
in.
Swiss little stash?
He does. He has a little bit, but it's a lot less. And he's a lot, thinner build, I would say, just that lanky younger man. And it's one of those where you're like, oh God. And then and he talks about a story, which he's told in the press conference room about wanting to be focused for 90 minutes. The brain doesn't do that. You don't stay on something. And especially somebody with anxiety, our brain jumps everywhere.
What were you just talking about?
Right. Exactly. I don't know. And then you walk away and you're like, that was so stupid. And it humanized him. And I thought I've already had nice interactions with him, but it humanized him even more. That, this is not just a dude who does cat-like jumps and he's amazing. He's a person with feelings and has bad days just like we all do. There's a lot going on in the background.
I think it was really important it's good for kids, it's good for parents, it's good just for society in general to hear a story like that, and what it means to talk to somebody, right? And be prepared and have anxiety and deal with it accordingly. But really imagine what that does in that locker room too. I mean, he just presented himself as a completely normal human on top of being a super stud goalie.
That's right. And so you think about my most recent interviews. This is my segue to our new guest who's going to be chiming in here any minute now. She was super patient while we had some technical difficulties.
I had mental difficulties.
Jake Girdwood Reich, or JGR as everybody's calling him, and he's cool with that, by the way, is just freshly 20. He is from the other side of the world, from Australia. He's over in the United States now, and we talked a little bit. He'll be the player profile for the next game for FC Juarez in the Leagues Cup with City, and just talked a little bit about how his body's still not on this time zone, about how it's really weird. It was hard for him to even sometimes do the calls with Lutz because here we're on a different time. Currently, you and I are recording at 2:00 in the afternoon, and it is 5:00 in the morning for our next guest who, bing bong, just chimed in.
Do you want to click the admit button?
Let me just make sure I don't click the
right there
button.
There we go.
And so Jake is from the other side of the world, just like this guest who hopefully is Sidney in. Hello, Sidney. Are you on?
Oh, there she is.
Good morning.
Morning.
So Sidney, I got to tell you, I don't know that I like any podcast enough to record at 5:00 in the morning. So thank you for joining us.
It's okay. I know it's really hard, like timing wise. So, I get up for work at this time anyway.
So that's what you kept telling me. And I'm like, oh, is she just being nice? Your dad. So the story goes, JB, so you kind of know her dad, Mike, is a fan of your podcast side and then became a fan of our side. And I ran in, Sidney, to your dad at the Missouri History Museum. The women had done a women's panel, and then like the next week they did a men's panel. And we were just sitting there, and I was waiting in line to talk to some of the guys. And your dad came up, we're talking a little bit, and he, of course, the first thing he says, I have a daughter, he's really proud of you playing in Australia. I'm like, that's awesome. And then we get to talking, and here he finds out I went to Eureka, you were a Wildcat as well, up through, and he's like, I think she would make a great guest. And I said, I completely agree. And it's taken us since, what was that, back in March or April, this much time to get it done, but that's kind of how it came.
I mean, it's that far away.
Right?
It's like carrier pigeons halfway around the world. It takes a while to get the message out and get it all set up.
But what's so funny is I need to know how long you've been there because you don't sound like you went to school in Eureka like I did. anymore.
It'll be about 6.5 years, so it'll be 7 in February.
I hear the accent a little.
Yeah, if you ask my family, I sound Australian. If you ask anyone here, I still sound completely American. So it's hit or miss. I'm about that in between.
So Sidney, right out of the gate, we always like to kind of put a pin in the map. For the listeners, let's talk a little bit about the early days. Where's home? And the typical, the mandatory question for all St. Louisans, what high school? The club. Let's get the early years laid out for us.
Well, from Eureka, technically Jefferson County, just over the river, but went to Eureka High School, so I'll always say Eureka to anyone else. Except in Melbourne, they don't know that, so I have to say St. Louis, and even then, they still don't know.
They're still like, is it middle of the country?
and then you're like, it's a southern suburb of Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always, I'm like, I'm 5 hours south of Chicago, and then they kind of like understand. Unfortunately, have to bring it up, but that's all right. Started playing when I was 2, and then just never stopped.
Did Eureka have a club? So when I went, I was way before your time, Sidney. So I was in Fenton, and the last couple of classes through Eureka before Fenton got Rockwood Summit. So at the time, there were no clubs that I knew of in Eureka. Fenton even didn't have its own club. We just had, Gallagher was nearby, or Bush. It was Bush. Did you play in a club in Eureka?
Not in Eureka, no. I played rec, like in the Eureka Soccer Association. I played that I can't even remember, for so long, I think, because my dad started coaching, because my sister started playing. So I think that started a bit later, because we started in Fenton as well, in the Fenton Soccer Association down there.
Yeah.
At, like, Booter Park and all that. And then we moved to Eureka Soccer Association. So then it was just more rec soccer. And then started playing club when I was about 8. So for JB Marine.
JB Marine, there it is again.
Who was your coach over at JB Marine?
I started with Gary Sexton.
Nice.
So he was great.
So given the fact that you are now getting paid to play, you excelled at the game. So let's talk a little bit about the transition, or maybe the aha moment, or maybe that drive. What kind of spurred the drive? You go from club, you're playing some high school ball. At what point did it start to feel as if this is more than just fun club soccer? I think I might want to play in college, and then clearly you went beyond that to play pro. Where did the aha moment come in for you?
I think I got it really, really late, to be honest, because I think my soccer experience was a bit up and down in terms of going to different clubs and trying to find the right coaches, the right people. And it wasn't until I played for Denny Brzezinski where it kind of was like, he put some in there for me, because I was a bit lazy, I'll be honest. And he kind of drove it into me that I actually have some real talent, and you have the ability to play in college, and if you really try, then you can actually go somewhere with it. So it wasn't really until then. So that's 15 or 16, and that took probably till I was a senior to really drill it in. So that I would say around then, and if it wasn't for him, then I probably definitely wouldn't have played in college, or definitely after. And same with in college, Wendy Dillinger, who I played for my senior year at UMSL. She was like, you should keep playing. And luckily Lindsay Eversmeyer created Fire and Ice, so I had that ability to do that.
I love when Soccer Mom Sunday guests are all on it together. I love it. We've had them both on. That's awesome to hear.
It's funny because every time there's a guest, my dad will send me the podcast, and he'll be like, do you remember playing for them, or do you remember training with them? So it's been very funny. Same with Lindsay Bryan. I did sessions with her when I was really young. So it's like a full circle moment there. But I think the big the big moment was like, it's kind of in two separate parts. So to play college was like 15, 16. And then it wasn't until my junior, senior year of college when Wendy was kind of like, I have this soccer agency, like you have the ability to go play after, like you should try. And it didn't really sink in until kind of then that, oh, like maybe I could give it a go. So if it wasn't for them, then I wouldn't be here for sure.
So you were like, what, 22 at the time, maybe? How old were you when this was
Yeah.
happening?
With Denny, it was 15, 16, 17, 18. So that the whole high school period.
Okay.
And then with Wendy, yeah, it was that 21, 22 age.
So it's so interesting because I know things are different nowadays, of course, but I don't, how did you get then to jumping into going to Australia? Was that like, hey, there's an overseas leagues, you should try to go overseas? Or I know Fire and Ice was more local. Was it that your first stepping stone? I'm just trying to figure out, how does somebody from St. Louis in Jefferson County going to Eureka High School get over to Melbourne, Australia to play pro soccer?
Yeah, it's really out there. It's a big jump considering I've never been out of the country until this point.
Got your passport.
Yeah, thank goodness. Like, it was funny because I transferred back to Seoul after my first semester of freshman year because I wanted to be closer to home. And then my mom's like, and then you decided to move halfway across the country. So, it whatever you got to do, I guess. But yeah, so I started with the Fire and Ice. After that, I was kind of like, well, let's start there. And then I continued speaking with Wendy after college. She was great. Played with her at indoor soccer in one of the meadows as well. And then she sent me this agency and was like, if you really want to do it, like, this is kind of your chance. And they had correspondence with Teams Australia, and I said, why not? I have, at that point, there wasn't much in the US unless you're in the NWSL, and it's hard to get that chance. So they have to go elsewhere. And I decided this is what I really wanted, and my parents supported me. So I'm very lucky, very grateful that it worked out the way it did.
So let me ask you, as far as like preparation goes, because on this show, we often talk about, the things that are above and beyond the soccer skills, the technical, tactical, all that other stuff that is kind of expected in order to excel at a higher level anywhere. You just talked about how you had never even been out of the country, and now you're going literally halfway around the world and in the Southern Hemisphere. Outside of the soccer expectations, what do you think that you were most surprised by as far as, I'm going to say not being prepared, that you've learned to work on, whether it's, diet discipline or whatever it is outside of soccer? What did you need to work on in order to become and maintain pro status?
Probably my work ethic, and that sounds so bad. But I found my love of, like, my passion of fitness here. And if it wasn't, again, for Eric Zobrist, because I did his fitness camp before every college season, who kind of made me realize, like, I like coaching as well. And he kind of put that into me of working as hard as you possibly can outside of it, to then make it easier for playing games and things. So it's going into the gym and the extra running, because who I don't like running, and I play probably the most running sport ever. So I think for me it was those things, and not relying on the talent side of it. I tended to do that, especially younger. So I think it was just the work ethic part. It came so naturally to me playing. And when you get to this level, everybody's just as good as you. So what's going to make you stand out? And that's how hard you work. So for me, it was that part of it that I really had to dig deep for, to show that, like, I deserve to be here. And I'm actually, like, a top tier player, and I wanted to prove that. So
that's great.
I think that would be it, definitely. I wish I had it when I was younger, but we all get there eventually. So.
Were you ever told that when you were younger? And I'm thinking too, when I was young, I happened to be really fast and I didn't have to really work for that. I just did it. And of course, being fit's a good thing too. What was your thing in the game that made you naturally good when you were younger?
My quickness as well. I was just lightning quick. I was little, so my little legs just worked really hard when I needed them to. And then I loved to juggle when I was younger. So my first touch was actually um, better than I had probably expected it to be, and it just stayed that way. So having that combination was a bit lethal, especially when I was playing striker. So that really helped. But again, Danny Vazeski just laid it into me when I was that young that you are lazy and you need to try harder. So, it was brutal and it was abrupt, but he's that kind of guy and a great coach. So if it wasn't for that, then my work ethic would be nowhere. So.
When you made the jump, what was the thing that you realized that you missed the most? Was it family? Was it friends? Was it, maybe the familiarity of your domestic teams? Because you're playing here in St. Louis, you're playing at UMSL. These are people that you know. This is a comfort zone. And then you go around the world and you leave a lot of people and you leave the environment. But most importantly, you leave teammates that you've probably known your whole life. When you landed there and you started to get this going, what did you realize or what did you miss the most?
Definitely my family. Luckily, my mom came with me in my first few weeks to kind of settle me in, or probably would have left. It's not really a huge culture shock, but from St. Louis to Melbourne, it still is different enough to be like, wow, like people live completely different than us. So I think definitely my family and having everyone so close, like my aunt is there, my cousins were there, my grandma, like everyone was in the St. Louis area. So I could go to family, friends. And I didn't really have that. I was living with a family in my first year. So I think that kind of having people around really helped kind of settle in. And there was another international player living with me. So like we became really close. So if it wasn't for that, I think I would have been really isolated. And the best thing about soccer is you're on a team. So you get to make friends quite quickly. And you see them 3-4 times a week. So luckily there was always kind of people around and I was coaching as well. So I was always like at the club doing things. So I was really quite busy. So in that aspect, it kind of filled that gap of you're by yourself here. But I think that was the biggest difference is not having my parents around. Like, I mean, I literally on the phone with them every day still, but it's not the same as being in person. So I think that was the biggest one was family. And just not having them around at all or at my games. I think the first like game that no one was there was probably like kind of the biggest shock because my whole life I've always had somebody at my game. So I think that's kind of when it really, really hit.
It's funny that you say that because I think we sometimes forget. You think, oh, okay, person gets older, it doesn't matter. But even on the City 2 side, talking with Bobby Murphy, City 2's second team here, talked about, learning from mistakes in the past of bringing a player who maybe, you don't have the language barrier necessarily, but it is a different culture, a different way of doing things. And I think it's Oscar who's with them. The last name is not on the tip of my tongue, but he's Colombian. And so he's like, besides the language barrier, it's more of, he doesn't have Colombian food. He doesn't know the places to go. A fellow from Jake Girdwood Reich from across who's just here with City now, hasn't really been outside of his hotel room because he doesn't know where to go. He doesn't know where to get a good meal necessarily. His mom is with him and that's kind of helpful. But, the teams knowing that in order to have success on the pitch, not to discount the outside factors because they're where you live the rest of your day and night.
Yep. Yeah. And it's a big void and it's a huge jump, especially going from certain countries to certain countries just because the culture shock is just completely different. So luckily I was in an English speaking country. the biggest difference was driving on the other side of the road.
Oh, right. I forgot they did that too.
So I feel very lucky that it's Australia, because I know I had a few friends go to Sweden, and that was probably a bigger culture shock to them than, where they don't speak probably English and you're living with a family. And I feel like maybe European life might be a little bit different than Australia. Probably similar, but it's a very relaxed lifestyle here, which is why it's so great.
How did you get used to watching all those deer jump around on their back legs, though? Like, that's...
It took me a second. I'm like, wait, what?
I had to throw in a kangaroo.
Oh, my gosh.
Those are weird.
I bet he was thinking about that joke for like 15 minutes.
No, it just came to me, which is really kind of pathetic.
So excited. No, I liked it. I've never heard it, but it's funny. I get so excited when I see them still on the side of the road. It's still not something that I'm used to.
Do they really?
We were driving
box?
to my partner's basketball game, and I haven't seen it personally, but I've seen so many videos. My dad keeps sending me videos of kangaroos, and I'm just like,
don't get hit by
one
one.
of these days I'm gonna see it.
Soccer Mom Sunday is supported by Explore St. Louis. Now that school's out, camps are booked, and summertime is upon, be sure to check out ExploreSTL.com for that date night suggestion or that daytime staycation when you need littles out of the house. From date night boutique hotels to daytime family adventures, ExploreSTL.com has you covered. Now, back to the show.
Well, let me clean up my nonsense question with an actual question. You as a American female soccer player, you were blessed to have been able to play here in what we believe to be the soccer capital of America, which is not Kansas. When you went over there and you got into the mix, talk a little bit about the level of play, maybe the style of play. Yeah, because you're competing at a very, very high level here against a lot of women that, probably some that are pro now as well, or maybe national team and beyond.
Real quick, can we frame it too? So your club is it Alameen or Alamine? How do you say your club name? Do I have that right from Facebook?
Alamein.
Alamein. I knew I'd get it wrong.
Yep,
and then what kind of, when you think of the tiers, where is it in the system of Australia? Like, how does that fit? Is there multiple tiers of women's pro soccer?
Yeah, so there's the A-League, which is the top league. So that's like Melbourne City, Melbourne Victory. So where your Steph Kelly's, Caitlin Fords, Sam Kerr's all played in.
Okay.
And then there's the MPLW, which is where I am. So it's that second tier league. And that's just Victoria, which is where Melbourne is. So that's the state. So every state has their own MPLW league. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So you don't get to play interstate.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I was just really curious about the level of play. When you got in there and you get into preseason, you start kicking around. What stood out? What didn't stand out? How confident were you, or was there fear, or what was the soccer brain like in the early days?
I was terrified, to be honest. It's a bit of an overwhelming feeling because they look at internationals as up here, so you're already coming in as like you have a high standard, and it was not like a ton of pressure, but there's a little bit of pressure to perform and to be like that standout, because you're looked at as that international. So it was a bit overwhelming at first, but I had a season before they restructured the leagues. I had a season in the one league below, so that's where I started, and which was called State 1 at the time, and I scored 46 goals in one season. So I think that got my confidence up a bit. And then, after that season, I went and trialed at the next level. And I think that season under my belt was a big confidence boost. So if it wasn't for that, then I'm not really sure how it would have gone. Because at that point I was like, oh, I'm meant to be here. Like, I just proved that time and time again last season. So like, this is kind of that chance to then stand out again. And I think that's what kept me going, and then kind of kept me up at that standard. We're training 3 nights a week and games on the weekend. So I'm putting in 4 days a week of training, 2.5 hours, 2 hours. And then like this is why I'm here. So I think just staying at my level, it was different because I used numbers. So like the 10, 11, 9, 8, 6, that was really new to me. So
Thank you.
like,
Thank you for
I had to
saying that.
understand.
Thank you so much, because I still feel very fraudy when I'm around and people, even people who I know haven't really played the game, but they know all the numbers. I'm like, we didn't grow up with that. We grew up with what the description,
No.
what the name of the position was, what the position did, right? Holding mid, or
Correct.
defensive mid, or attacking mid, or what, we didn't grow up with that. So now I'm like, what's the 9 again? Oh, that's like another
No.
striker. Okay.
But that's really more of an Americanization of the game, because prior to us as kids
do
playing
numbers.
striker, no, but the rest of the world had been doing numbers from the get go. The number 1 was the goalie, and 2
Right.
and 3, 2, 3, 4, 5 across the back line, and
But then also sometimes we don't get off of focusing on Sidney here, but sometimes in the formation, the job duties change. And a little piece of psychology is that numbers actually are a poor way to name a position. It's better with a descriptor. Our brains accept that better with what the position does.
unless you're number 10.
Fair. But like in baseball, we don't call a shortstop it's position number 5, correct? I have 5 or 4. You don't baseball and softball, you don't call them by the numbers.
Baseball's weird.
Second base.
Hockey, you just won 99.
Okay, fair enough.
All right.
But that's a really great point of, the game, but you're walking into some systems that are a little bit different, and you're trying to wrap your brain about that and also apply that to what you currently know and go be the you. It's funny. I'm just looking at a clip I went and stalked your Facebook page, Sidney. And it's funny because a lot of the posts aren't even yours. They're other people tagging you of your greatness. And I think the broadcaster color person or the play-by-play person called it Dancing Sidney Allen, dancing through and scoring goals. I think you played Brunswick Juventus FC in your maybe most recent, or what I see on here from July. And then, of course, mom and dad, it looked like, had been in to visit as well. Is there a big difference in your league or Australia in general with how the game is played, or is it simply the same game? I'm thinking of stylistically or anything like that.
Very different style. And I kind of realized when I got into that NPL and played against their like kind of state kind of team of this system that they try to play. And it's very like to the wings, like to your fullbacks, up the line and cross it in. And for the longest time, that was kind of their style. So like for me, that is not my style. And
you're up the center, girl.
So trying to adjust to them, but also for them to adjust to me it took a little bit, but once they kind of saw like that, how I play, and like it was so successful and all these different moments of being creative, that they kind of started changing as well. So that kind of style started to change, and the coach at the time didn't want to play that. So they kind of all want to get away from that in a way to develop, because you can't stick to one style or you're never going to grow in the game. And you can see that now with the Matildas and how they've changed the way they play, that the system in Australia is actually growing and getting better. It took a while. So, and then we missed 2 years because of COVID. So that development and the change has been very interesting. And going from different formations, I think I've played every single formation known to man now.
Yeah.
As well. Going from high school and college where it was more like a 4-4-2 in high school, then to different variations of that in college, and like wrapping my head around that, and then to Australia where they just change it all the time. And
sometimes you're when you're on the attack, you're in a formation, and when you're in defense, you change your formation
100%.
to be more defensive. And I didn't grow up playing that for sure. We just everybody get back and everybody get forward.
Exactly. So it was a big adjustment when I got, probably it was 2 years ago, and I had a coach, and that kind of came into play, the way we attacked but then defended differently. And I was kind of new, and I was 20 whatever years old, that it completely changed. So it's forever growing, and I'm forever learning something every new. So that's what's so exciting about it. But it's just so interesting that, the way they tactically from when I was, 15, how it's changed to now that I'm 30, 15 years, that the game has just grown immensely. And that goes with, going to a different country and learning their style as well. So it's very, very interesting. And That's why the game's so great.
So I got to ask, the other day, there's this little event going on called the Olympics. And apparently the U.S. women played the Matildas the other day.
They did.
I have to assume you didn't have any guilt in watching the result. But as now your seventh year, down under, approaching seventh year. What you just said, you were talking about how historically their style was get it wide, run it up the wings, and cross it in and do it. Did you notice in that game that they kind of, when they needed the goals, they went right back to that? Because they were running down the wings. Yeah. And so my question to you is, as you watched it as an expat, as a U.S. woman living in Australia, what was going through your head watching that game, as far as like either pride for your nation or maybe even pride for Matilda's competing and, keeping it close? What was it like watching that particular game for you?
It's always hard when Australia play the Matildas. I get so stuck in between. Obviously, the US will always have a special place. However, I love the Matildas and the atmosphere that they've created here. Australia is obviously very small, and I've trained with most of those girls on the Matildas. I was a training player at Melbourne City with Steph Catley, Emily Van Egmond, Ellie Carpenter, Lydia Williams, Tamika Yell, Ivy Lewick. I've gotten to train with them, so in a way, I feel like I kind of know them, even though they would not know who I am, but that's okay.
So you're saying you were aiding and abetting the enemy?
Yes. Okay. I find myself going for Australia a lot more because I'm just I trained with them. They're such nice people, and their work ethic and their mentality was just it was just amazing to even just be in a training session with them. So, and then having the World Cup in Australia last year and experiencing that, and then that whole atmosphere and going to those games. And I was at the Canada game where they beat them 5-0. They just spark this energy, and their attitude and the way the country got around them. I can't help but go for them in a way because they're a bit of an underdog, and that's kind of how I felt my whole soccer career. So I tend to go for them a little bit more. But it's always hard because every time the U.S. scores, I still get excited and I still rub it in my partner's face. But, it's a happy balance.
But you think back to the World Cup, you think back to that wasn't the U.S. women's best showing. We've talked about on this podcast before that other countries have caught up and have even surpassed potentially when it comes to style of play. In talking, it's just so perfectly timed, this podcast. And my last player interview with Sidney was an Australian. Jake told me Jake Erwood-Reich said he was at the final, and I just asked him, I said, was that cool for you? He said it was absolutely cool. He said it was absolutely cool because it shines. He was like, soccer is not the number one sport in Australia. It's rugby. Maybe he said when I was little, most of the kids my age were playing cricket as well. It was kind of like another, and I was like, oh, it's very much like it is in the United States, right? It's one of many sports and isn't the nation's top sport potentially for kids to go into. So I was thinking of that. He said it was so great to have the world eyes taking a look at our country, and our country also seeing how important this sport was to the rest of the world, and wondered your thoughts about that. It being your number one sport, but we grew up, you went to Eureka. I don't know how it was at your time, but football and baseball were the big sports, not necessarily soccer when I went up to Eureka High School.
Oh no, it was definitely football growing up. That was it. That was
the football you don't play with your hands. Or you don't play with your feet, you play with your hands. American football.
Right. Right. Going to those games every Friday night was just the norm. But yeah, it was I can't even describe being at the World Cup. We went to the USA game as well when they got out in the round of 16 as well. So I was at that game. So I've never seen people so happy. Obviously there's US fans, but I think people got more enjoyment at seeing the US fail than seeing Sweden win. And I think that was kind of a surreal kind of feeling because like, obviously I'm heartbroken because I expected them to win, regardless of what team it was. And that's just kind of the norm for us with the U.S. national team and for the women. Um, yeah, it was amazing to see packed stadiums and a packed, like, it's called Federation Square, which is kind of like I don't know how to. They put it up on a TV, and like it's a whole area where people can just go watch. And there was thousands of people there, just watching the game standing, and it's an amazing feeling and moment to kind of see that the sport you grew up playing for 28 years is now finally getting the recognition it deserves. Because it's it teaches you so much. You have friends for life. Like, I still have friends from when I was 10 years old. And so it was just, I can't even describe it, like being in that atmosphere. Like, it was surreal, and experiencing that with my parents who, have been there through everything, was pretty amazing. So, I always think about the World Cup, and we still talk about it to this day. Like, you just don't get to experience it.
Yeah, I don't know that a lot, unless you grew up playing and following teams, that a lot of Americans can truly understand the pull and the draw of the sport worldwide. I also have a show, as you probably know from your dad, on KMOX, where we just cover some soccer here and there. And I always give the other guy, Tom Ackerman, you've talked with him on your show, and Matt Pauley some trouble, because they're like, you guys do your show and like the number of views you'll get on StreamYard. I'm like, because it's a world sport. Take the World Series, take the Super Bowl, times that by 100, right? And that, or more. And that is, the World Cup. That is what you experience. Even Euro 2024 and Copa America are levels beyond. We don't have people from all over the world, I'm sorry, watching the World Series. They don't watch it. They don't go look for it. They don't care. Rico. Maybe. Or the Super Bowl. The only reason the Super Bowl got so many eyes on them, you should thank Taylor Swift. Otherwise, you're not getting a worldwide audience. In soccer, if you have anything that deals with international players or something on a world stage, you get world eyes, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, and kind of listening to this recent part of our conversation, it got me thinking, just really the growth of the game, and I'm wondering about you in particular and the timing, because life is about time, opportunity, and chance, right? You're 28, you've been playing pro for a number of years now, and you left at a time where, yes, there was pro soccer here, but it had a lot of growth. It had a lot of growing to do. Fast forward to today, and the women's league in Kansas City, they have the stadium that's for just the women's team, and the value of these teams, the expansion of the league, the A-listers that are getting involved, and really the growth of professional soccer in America for women. What goes through your head when you look at what's happening and where you're at? Do you see it as are you excited for the growth? Do you miss that? Do you wish that maybe you were 8 years younger so that you'd be coming into kind of the growth of the pro game here domestically? How do you balance the two between your experience and where you landed, and the growth here at home of the game at a pace that none of us would have predicted?
I think it's a bit of relief. It's kind of like, finally, everything that we as women in that sport have been feeling and wanting and thinking has just, like, finally, it's gotten there. So I think it's a bit of relief that for the future that it's actually going to be so much better. Not that it wasn't great, and I love my experiences because it's got me to where I am, and I wouldn't be who I am without all of those. So I don't think, oh, if I was younger, because I think without those experiences, I would be a completely different person, and I probably wouldn't be living across the world, living in a new country, new experiences, new lifestyle, and getting to do something that I really love. And I didn't find that until coming here. So I think in a way it's kind of shaped how I've been. So I think for me, I'm so excited, and it's just that bit of relief, like I said, that is that it's finally happening for these women and these girls that deserve, all of it, all the hard work and dedication that everyone has come like before has put in to get to that point. Like everyone, small name, big name, whoever it was, has had some sort of push for that, whether it was creating your own team, like my dad coaching me when I was younger and creating that opportunity for other girls. Like, if it wasn't for that, then those girls wouldn't have experienced that either. And then growing, now they're moms. Now they're going to go push their kids into doing, those type of things too. So I think in a way we've opened up the doors for everyone. And I think that's more exciting and that's a better kind of feeling, at least for me, that I was a part of that kind of generation of getting it started and getting it known rather than starting in it and growing, because I think I like being an underdog and I like proving a point to people that say I can't do something. So I think for me, that's kind of what it is like, well, we told you so. Like we're actually great at this sport too, and it's exciting and
it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fun experience. Yeah, we're tough. We stay on our feet and we go hard, and that's what makes it so good. So
he knows
so
I hate diving, Sidney. I hate diving. I hate it. Can't stand it.
Same. I can't do it. It's every inch of me just doesn't want to go down. I can't seem to
get up and play.
Do it. I don't know how people. Yeah, I don't know how they do it.
Well, especially the performance. Like when you go down, and I'll live like when you go down a little bit and you're not sure. Sometimes you get hit enough where you're like, I'm not sure if I'm hurt, but then but like the performances, just go get up and play, dust it off. I wanted to ask you, who was your favorite player growing up? Did you have a couple of female players that you admired, or even male players that you really enjoyed and kind of aspired to?
Michelle Akers was my favorite player growing up. So your podcast with her was probably my favorite.
Yeah, she's awesome.
And because I think having somebody from St. Louis and Becky Sauerbrunn, like those seeing them like, oh, they're from where I am. Like they were able to go out and do things. And I played with Lori's sister, so I think having like that kind of connection and seeing that was just unreal. That like anybody could make it, basically. Doesn't matter where you're from or anything like that. It's really just based on your talent. So
yeah, and I'm thinking of like the Olympics too, of being, it's this melting pot right now of a bunch of sports right in a short period of time. We don't play rugby. We don't. I mean, but it's super interesting. I like the Salona Mare, and I like seeing the different teams play, but I'm thinking of when I was growing up, which is a little bit earlier than you were growing up, but probably we didn't have as many idols, right, to look at necessarily, and to look at and consider, maybe I want to be that, and maybe I have a body type that's athletic. Maybe I have somebody that I feel more akin to whatever sport that they play. My daughter, my firstborn daughter, is done with gymnastics, but she keeps turning on the TV to watch Simone Biles do her thing, right? To look at that kind of person, that kind of athlete, which is different from this kind of athlete. And I'm just thinking of how that must be like to now at a glance on TV station at the moment. My girls can take their pick of the athlete to admire, along with my boys,
or
looking
Caitlin
at those
Clark.
things. Or Caitlin Clark, right, on the WNBA side, changing the game and getting more eyes on that. I think like you and me, we're kind of like, duh, we already knew this would have been fun to watch. But does the growth of that kind of also, how does that hit you now? Because there are a lot of people going, oh my gosh, and there are a lot of us going, we told you so.
Yeah. It's exciting. It's so exciting because my partner, she plays basketball, so like we kind of both have like different views on different sides of sport to kind of see that. So I think it's just exciting. I'm a group fitness instructor and manage a gym, so like I have a bunch of parents that are like asking me and their kids like, oh, they're playing this sport and it's in boys, and they're like, well, what should we do here? And like, oh, did you, they come and watch my games. They brought their sons to come watch me play, and they're screaming my name in the stands, and it's like 7, 8 year old boys, and like when would that have ever been a thing to think of, that you'd bring your boys to a female soccer game. And I speak about that with my members, and they're just like, they need to see it. They need to see female athletes, and they see their moms going to the gym every morning at 5:15. Like it's that same sort of vision and role models that everyone needs to see. So I think it's just giving people a different view and a different outlook, that like everybody is equal and when it comes to sport. And everyone deserves that chance to get recognized and supported and feel like they're LeBron James of their sport, if that makes sense. And it's exciting. I love Caitlin Clark. I made my dad get me a jersey. So I have an Iowa jersey when he was working there. So I think what she's done for not just basketball, but women's sport in general, is pretty amazing. And like I would thank her for doing that, because there's not many people that come along and just change the face of women's sports. So many people have done that before her. So we can't not recognize those people. And I think she's very grateful in that sense as well. But I think she's taken it really well on her shoulders to lift us up even more. Yeah. So it's exciting. I love it.
No, I love it. I mean, it's fun to hear, perspectives as it spreads out. Obviously all these athletes are globally relevant, and they have impact. And I had a question. I wanted to bring it back to St. Louis and along the lines of idolry, of clout, because over the past 10, 15 years in particular, going back even further, you mentioned that your idol was Michelle Akers. But big name women players are, from multiple nations, are becoming household names. How fun was it for you, though, within your circle of Australian teammates and competitors, et cetera, when you had the opportunity to just talk trash and tell them, here's where I'm from, and in my hometown, or from my hometown, is Lori Kolupny and Becky Sauerbrunn. And did you ever did you ever have those conversations? Did you have fun with it? Because, again, I mentioned it earlier, St. Louis is not the normal city on either side of the spectrum, men's or women's soccer. How cool is it to know that you're part of that story now and mentioning those names?
I think my partner might be sick of it. I say to it every time they come on. Every time the US was playing and Becky was playing and she was captain, I was like, she's from St. Louis. And she's like, you told me already.
Thank you.
Yeah, but she's from St. Louis. Well, did you know that? So I spit it out every time I get the chance, because it's more common now. Like then, it's so exciting to not only be the national team, but she's also a captain. So I think that just shows the leadership and everything.
Aren't you the captain?
We can take credit for that.
Are you the captain of your team?
I am. So like, it must be a St. Louis thing. So I bring it out every chance I get, that they were from St. Louis. Just because it's exciting, it's repping where you're from, and I could be like, I'm from the same place. Like I trained with her once, so like it's those fun things that you get to say, because not everyone gets to say it. So I brag about it all the time.
Let me ask you.
They're from the same place.
I got a part B to that question, and that is now looking in the rearview mirror, who's coming down the pipe behind you, because they were in front of you and here you are in the middle, but behind you there are new names that are St. Louis young female players that are really rocking the soccer world, and that being Alex Pfeiffer being one, and then you have Maddie Di Maria, who continues to clock tremendous accolades. When you look at these young ladies that are coming up behind you and what their opportunities are and how they're thriving, what does that mean to you?
I'm excited for them. Like there's nothing like being able to go play college and then go play after college and keep that going, and then keeping that like I'm from St. Louis kind of in you, and showing and repping your hometown in another place, and the way that you've developed and things. So, like, it, I can't be more excited for anyone after me to go and experience the same things, um, because it's just going to one make you a better player, which is obviously what everybody wants. But I think it's just going to make people better in general,
Yeah.
outside of soccer. So I think if anyone has a chance to go do it, then they definitely need to. But um, what those girls have access to now, they need to exploit it as much as possible and enjoy it, and take it, because it wasn't like that growing up. So I think if anyone has the chance to do it, they just need to. So I think they need to take what they have and go for it, because why not?
Yeah, I love it.
And I'm thinking of you said you coach as well. Do you coach young ones?
I did, yeah. I coached 8-year-old boys. I've coached 15-year-old girls and 8-year-old girls. And now I'm a group fitness instructor / manager. So now I have really old. Sorry, I shouldn't say old. I have ranging from 20 to 60s. So
Right.
yeah, in the fitness. So it's different from soccer, but still coaching.
So I'm thinking of what might be your advice. So I have my two daughters. One is 8, one's 15. JB's got a young man, but because all played soccer, but 3 kids. But one's in City Academy. This is the time of the year where I think next week is when high school soccer starts for the boys in St. Louis. Clubs are gearing up again. I know, because I'm on an email list and I keep getting all these emails of things I haven't done yet to register and payments that are due and uniforms that have to be ordered. And a lot of kids with big dreams, and sometimes parents with even bigger dreams maybe for our kids. Any words of, you've seen both sides of being the player, you've also coached little ones. Words of advice for, it's not a short journey, it's long. And how do you keep your love while simultaneously going for maybe big dreams, such as what you've done?
I think be patient is probably the biggest thing, because it's not going to come right away. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, and it's a lot of hard work. And whether you realize it, when you're 8 or when you're 18, what you decide to do, it's never too late. Like for me, I didn't realize it until I was, 21, 22. So one, it's never too late. And be patient with yourself as well, because you're only human. So you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have off days. You're going to have off games. But as long as you learn from it and you take that and you get better every single day, then, that's going to be the most important thing, I think, outside of the soccer part of it. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty of the playing, there's a quote by Kobe Bryant that I actually probably live off of, is hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So you could be the most talented person in the world, but if you're not going to put effort, and I had to learn it the hard way, you're not going to get anywhere. So it's not only the skills that you have, but it's, if there's a ball 5 meters away, are you going to get there? Are you going to make that second effort to go get that ball? Because that's what coaches see. They see the work ethic side of it. They see the fancy moves and things. But to me, as a player and as a coach, if my teammate makes an extra run to go get the ball and saving it from going out, and that changes the game, and now they don't have a corner kick, to me, that's hyping me up, and that's making me want to work harder. So I think that side of the game goes a little bit under. And I think that would be the most important thing, I think, for anyone wanting to stand out, is to outwork every single person on that field, because that's what's going to make you better, your team better, and be successful. And I think I learned that the really hard way, but once you learn it, there's no going back.
That's, I mean, we're done. That's great advice.
Yeah, no.
For free. You just got that for free. That's awesome.
I think we should just transcribe that, send it to you, and you should publish a book.
And we'll quote you this time. Okay, last one. So your dad, obviously a huge fan, right, of yourself, and so much so that, said hello to me.
Did you just say he's a huge fan of his daughter?
Yeah,
of his own daughter.
But of course, like he's here I am meeting him at a Missouri History Museum, and the first thing he's thinking of is, not just that he, likes the podcast, but hey, I think this would be a great guest for you. And of course it is. How parental support? I find myself as a former player, sometimes maybe not supporting my kids in the way that they need to. Maybe sometimes I push too hard. Maybe there are times I think, should I be pushing? Advice or words what are the ways that your parents supported you or keep supporting you that have been more helpful than not?
Just showing up, to be honest. Like, just having them there is probably, like, even now they wake up at 3 a.m. to watch my games online. So without that, I know, like, I have 2 messages waiting on my phone after every single game saying unlucky or you did so good, like your passes, your corner kicks, like it can be the exact details that you like need to hear after.
Where you're like, they really did watch
a good one. Yeah, 100%. Like, they're up at 3 a.m. I don't know how they do it, but every single weekend, halfway across the world, they're watching and they're showing up. And then I call them the next day and we have hour-long analysis of the game. Jeez. And when my dad was here, we're going through our VO watching the games. Like, it's just showing up. And I'll always take the advice, but just having them there or like be a part of it, I think is something that probably we take for granted a little bit, because not everyone gets that same opportunity. So I think just show up, just be there, just cheer them on, because there's nothing like it. Because when you go away to college and they're not always there, but you're watching online, it's kind of that same thing. Like, you're still showing up. So I think anyone out there for their kids, like, let them be on the field and you just show up and you be there. Because when it comes to my age now, looking back at it, like taking me to training 2-3 nights a week, traveling to tournaments, out of state tournaments, and it's when me and my sister were doing the same thing. So one parent would be one parent would be the other. So
we know that drill.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah. If it wasn't for that, then me and my sisters wouldn't have gotten the opportunities that we got, of playing club, playing college, and after. So just show up and be there, because that's all they really want.
Well, I'm going to close with 2 really quick, hard-hitting, must-ask questions, and the first one is: do you now prefer roasted lamb or toasted raviolis?
Always T-Rav.
Yeah, because roasted lamb is the official dish of Australia.
Okay. Okay. But T-Rav's
I
one.
Googled it. It's what?
Roasted lamb is very good, though. I will say that.
Okay.
And question number 2 is: you have to choose Men at Work or Nelly.
Nelly.
Oh,
sure.
yeah, but she paused there.
She did.
Did you see that?
Anytime, since I work in a gym and I put him on, I'm just like, he's from St. Louis. And then anytime I hear him,
and all the gym members are like, oh God.
I love it.
Literally. And same with my partner. I'm like, did you know that Nelly's from St. Louis? And she's just like, yes, he told me.
Did you know he lived
already.
Did you know he lived down the street from Becky Sauerbrunn?
Yeah.
No, I'm guessing on that one.
All the time.
Oh, that's awesome. No, I love
Jen,
that. I love how I was looking at your highlights and clips, and JB's looking up food and songs.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm a huge Men at Work fan, but I mean.
Well, Men at Work, yes. We're also 80s.
You might get a kick out of this. You actually can eat kangaroo here too. So.
Oh, I'm down.
No.
Why not?
Yeah,
I think because
my dad,
pets that hit you.
It's like deer though here, or like kangaroo like deer. So like you can eat deer. So
okay.
My dad cooked it on the barbecue when he was first here. So
on the Barbie,
together.
on the Barbie, right? Is that what we say?
Shrimp
they
on the
say
Barbie.
barbecue, but yeah.
Barbecue here. Okay. So there you go.
We're totally embarrassing ourselves
We
at this
are.
point.
You asked
Not
about
at
men
all.
at work
Not at all.
at
You
80s.
just have to go to Melbourne. You should go to Melbourne and visit. It's good.
I'm down.
I would go. We could record an episode in person.
You know,
We
the
should
one
put
thing
that on there.
the one thing I wouldn't do, or maybe I have a
And you have to
question.
go to a footy game.
A footy game.
I would do that too. The one thing I would not do is get in the Great Barrier Reef because apparently you guys have big great white sharks down that
No,
way.
thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah, she's like,
I
yep.
haven't been there yet, but I've heard it's great.
Oh, there you
I
go.
don't go in the water. I'm scared of
Well,
water, so,
it's
yeah.
been a pleasure.
But definitely got to check out Australian footy. So
I'm down.
Got it.
This has been a pleasure. Best of luck with this season. Is your season fall
you.
through spring or spring through fall?
well, right now it's winter, so it's ending in 3-4 weeks.
Okay.
And then we'll get about a month break, and then we'll start pre-season as we head into summer because we're opposite season.
Awesome. Well, good luck, and it was a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you, Sidney.
Thank you so much for having me. Really, I love your podcast.
Well, thank you. We'll be in touch. We'll say hello to your dad at the next City game as well, and we'll go from there.
And then you do. So I've been like, follow, share,
Oh my goodness.
review,
Like, review, follow, share.
and subscribe.
There you go.
Add the fifth one.
Thank you. Talk Mom Sunday.
Thanks, Sidney.
No worries. Thanks.
Take care.